Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show for Tuesday, November the 24th. I thought that I would start today by talking about Twitter and my own relationship with it. A few days ago, I signed up to this service, which lets me know of all of the people who have unfollowed me. And as I mentioned previously, I was really rather surprised to find out how many people were unfollowing me, and in particular, the names of so many of the accounts. And people who had been following me for years, or someone who had been following me for one day, but they decided to follow me and then unfollow me in the same day. Didn't make much sense. Then I came across an account that I knew, that I recognized, and I thought, that's odd. So I went to the account. It is @I_Aver, @I_Aver, AVER. Self-description: paleo-conservative, comes closest, USAF veteran, repealed the 1965 Immigration Act. Twitter strips my account of followers, so expect multiple unfollow refollows. Yes. And then I saw @I_Aver unfollowed you. This account followed you for 12 days. And I got some responses to this. From Musil Protege, confirmed by at least a few other like-minded people with similar numbers. @I_Aver himself responded, "So true. I never unfollowed KMG Victoria. That was Twitter's mendacity. I have to refollow KMG repeatedly." Vox Day Respecter, or VDR Manic Skin, responded, "It's never happened to me with KMG, but it's happened with other accounts." Boswald Bollicksworth II responded, "And yet we put up with it. Wish the sphere of interesting people would move to Gab." Gnosis @Green Shoots S said, "I'm slowly moving over there." Again, from Boswald Bollicksworth II, "Twitter may be allowing just enough freedom for interesting people to prevent them from leaving." I guess that the reason that I haven't left is because of what you might call my investment in it over 5 years, or what others might call the sunk cost fallacy. I have slightly over 8,000 followers, but the strange thing is that since several hundred people, new people, follow me every month, I reckon that if they hadn't started unfollowing people, or people unfollowing me, I probably have between 15 and 20,000 Twitter followers by now, which isn't all that many compared to a lot of accounts, but I reckon it's in the, 95th percentile or higher. The primary purpose for my Twitter account, and has been for a couple of years now, is to advertise my appearances on YouTube. And it looks as if Twitter does not want my YouTube channel to have more listeners. Of course, YouTube is owned by Google. Twitter is a separate company, but I guess they're all in it together in this way. I used to tweet a lot more than I do, but then when I realized that I would have to be tweeting 100 to 150 times a day in order to get the numbers that I was getting before Twitter decided to strangle my reach, I decided that it wasn't worth it. Occasionally, I'll get up to a large number of tweets in a day, but that's just depending on my mood. Previously, Twitter had what they called shadow banned me on quite a few occasions. I don't know that they do that anymore. There's a place where you can go to check whether you're being shadow banned, and I do that every so often, and apparently I'm not. But if they're going to strangle my reach, it has pretty much the same effect. The shadow banning it was so ham-fisted that I had to laugh even as I was angered. Because what happened quite a few times was that responses to my tweets in terms of comments, likes, and retweets would frequently be higher than the supposed total number of people who had seen my tweet. And I gather that when Twitter found out about this flaw in that particular algorithm, they decided to move on to something more sophisticated. Gab and Parlay, obviously, a great deal more freedom there. But on the other hand, they are both, as far as I can see, echo chambers that you're only going to be seeing published items. I don't know what they call them on these other forums. But there are going to be people who largely share your own political beliefs. And one of the things that was great about Twitter, well, years ago, was that you were exposed to all manner of thought. And if I were to leave Twitter, well, that's where the news is reported now. And I like to hear what people who disagree with me think, because, of course, the elite is made up of these people. And in any event, if I could, I suppose, keep my Twitter account, and I have a Gab account. I haven't used it for a long time. I could get a Parlay account. And then what? Instead of the time that I spend on Twitter, I could take that time and then I could add the time spent on a Gab account and the time spent on a Parlay account. And as I spend probably far too much time on the internet as it is, I'm not going to do that. Let's take a look at the chat. Hello, Professor Paul. Hello, Paul Casso 88. Hello, William Hicks. Jogakin 666 says, watched The Lives of Others last night. Powerful film, touching. Yes. David Wright says, I don't get it. Why don't you build your own platform? Yeah. I just, when Twitter started, I guess I was still blogging at the time. And I thought, oh, so Twitter exists because blog posts are too deep and substantial. But it caught on, as I say. That's where the news is reported first now. So it was an unexpected success, at least from my point of view. Of course, you see that its initial success is tied to the Arab Spring in North Africa. And the advantage of Twitter, we were told over Facebook, is that you can call yourself whatever you like. Now, this connection of Twitter to the Arab Spring always been intriguing to me, because I've long held the suspicion that the CIA had its hand in certainly the propagation of Twitter around the world. Head McDeck says, looking sharp in dark, Kevin. Yeah, it's a nice ensemble. So KMG finally decided to stream from funeral parlor, says YT. No, that's not your joke. That's our Australian friend's joke. David Wright says, you are right, Gab is nothing but preaching to the choir. Head McDeck says, that's one of the most visible differences between the left and right. We loathe echo chambers and they demand them. Well, as Jonathan Haidt has pointed out, leftist opinion, to crib a metaphor from Mao Zedong, this is the sea in which we swim. There is no getting around. There's no getting around it. So in one sense, we're better armed than the left is, because we know what they're saying, but they don't know what we're saying. But on the other hand, ignorance is bliss. I'm going to be talking once again about the Great Reset, where, let's see, the Prime Minister of Canada's office has waded into this. It's a dangerous right-wing conspiracy theory, a conspiracy theory that the Prime Minister of Canada has personally endorsed. But they can just keep gaslighting us. Conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory, conspiracy theory. Haven't you got it yet? Shut up. But it's the truth. The truth. What is truth? Said Pontius Pilate. Okay. Jogokin 666 says, I knew it was an intelligence conduit when the green avatars appeared. Why is the video quality so poor? I guess the video quality is so poor because of the lack of sunlight or because of the ghastly sky that has appeared, the ghastly, yellowish sky that I can't do anything about. To recap, and I'll make this short because I know people have complained about it. I am in what you would call the breakfast nook here, kitchen nook, and my computer stuff is on a big glass table, which is wholly unsuited for it. But there is no other place in the place that I'm living in now where I could set up my computer. And there are almost floor to ceiling windows on 3 sides. And so in spring and the summer, that means a lot of gorgeous ambient light. In the autumn and the winter, it means gloom. And there's nothing I can do about this. And I am likely not going to be in this place for much longer. Where to? I don't know. William Hicks says, as these corporations put their squeeze on their users, decentralized crypto social networking will pick up. We shall see. We shall see about that. I'm going to, repeat my prediction that the alternative media in the United States will survive a Biden presidency if there is a Biden presidency. God forbid there will not be. But these people should not expect to be paid, because the alternative media in the United States is going to be demonetized as never before. Thomas Henderson says Klaus Schwab is a conspiracy theory. No, he is quite open about his goals, even unto transhumanism. But there we are. No more rented rooms, KMG. I don't know what the future holds. I really don't. I don't know whether I'm going to be staying in the Lower Mainland or moving back to Victoria, or people have suggested to me that I move up island, which would be cheaper. But of course, the older one gets, and I am quite old now, the more difficult it becomes to meet new people, to become friends in the meat space, as the kids like to say. And for me to move to a place that I have never lived in before, I suspect that the mental consequences could be dire. Choke again 666. So now Chase Bank has eliminated all tellers and put a big box with an ATM in their place. I'm just going to mention something with regard to this, that actually in banking, Canada has a quasi-monopoly. The same thing in telecommunications, quasi-monopolies. What that means is that innovations such as ATMs, to give one example, or broadband internet, they are adopted in large numbers far faster in Canada than they are in the United States. And I remember seeing in the 1990s, a sign like at my bank branch saying, to better serve you, this branch is closing. How does that serve me better, that you're closing my branch? So they encouraged us all to use ATMs, and ATMs have actually been used in Canada, a lot of them since the late 1970s. But if you go to an ATM which is not of your bank, you get charged a fee, which seems absolutely outrageous to me, because the banks shut down their branches, fired all these tellers, saved a fortune, forced people to go to ATMs, often at a personal risk, depending on what neighborhood you're getting your money from. But no, we're going to make you pay a fee unless you drive or walk some distance, often considerable, to one of your own. Is that any better? Let's take a look here. That is better. That's considerably better. And perhaps better still. Perhaps better still. William Hicks says, Kevin, I read an article this AM about A Clockwork Orange. Reminded me of a video called The Ludovico Lie by Rob Ager, where he shows how Alex is faking. Any thoughts? The ending of the film is deliberately ambiguous because we know that nurse with the white coat and the blue hair with the sweet smile is giving Alex some tests. And he reacts violently to a lot of them, and he complains about nightmares as if someone is fooling around with my Gulliver. Of course, at the final line of the film is Alex saying triumphantly, I was cured all right. But there's a very strong suggestion that he has, in fact, been brainwashed again, that the first brainwashing went too far and made him such a pitiful figure. They decided simply to change him back and buy him off with a government job. What job and how much, he says. Respectable commenting name says, no thanks, Halper. I shudder to think of the Australian walking around nude with a didgeridoo while I'm trying to listen to the book club or theater Thursday. David Wright says, it's like the 70s changeover from service to self-service gas stations. Did the gas become cheaper as a result? Chokokin 666 again. I had to physically deposit a check, and it was quite sad. A moribund branch with one single taciturn lady sitting behind a plexiglass shield wearing surgical gear. COVID is an absurd farce. There's a fellow called Dalton Camp who is called the Ominous Grise of the Conservative Party in the 1960s and 70s. He was largely the coup against John Diefenbaker was largely attributed to him. He used to write this column in Toronto Star, and people used to mock him as an old man. And he had been complaining about ATM machines and ha ha, boomer, except he was considerably older than a boomer. You see Silent or Greatest Generation. And I thought, why are they mocking? To old people, a lot of them find difficulties in using ATMs, and they're frightened of them because they're not enclosed in the safety of a bank building, and also because the back and forth with the teller or the tellers is often the only human contact that they had. But as again, apparently we've discovered in recent decades that Aristotle was wrong, and that man is not a social animal. Palpcaso 88 says, I went to McDonald's today to get a sausage McMuffin. The staff were wearing more protective gear than the cleanup crew at Chernobyl. Yeah. Will there ever be a rainbow, as Monty Burns once asked so plaintively? But let's go to some big good news about the Dow. And I formulated a hypothesis some years ago. Why all this attention to the Dow and the GDP? Because not that long ago, the Dow was an index that very few people paid attention to. I suppose if you had shares, you might pay attention to it. But of course, the Dow is a basket of 30 different stocks. It's not as representative as the S&P 500. The GDP, who knows what that means? The GDP includes government inputs. So to give one amusing example, in Alberta, while Alberta was just absolutely being hammered, while its economy was destroyed by the collapse of the oil and gas industry, it had the fastest rising GDP in Canada. Why? Because of all the money the NDP government was borrowing, but that counts towards the GDP. But it just seemed to me that if you're talking to people on the ground since 2008, it doesn't look good out there. People unable to get jobs, people getting jobs which are far below their qualifications or certainly their desires, and especially after with so many people having large student debt, that no, it didn't look good on the ground, but the media constantly hammering, look at the Dow, look at the Dow, look at the GDP. Oh, yeah, I'm not supposed to think of my life or my family's life or my friend's life or people I know in the community. It's all about the big indices. It's all about the GDP and the Dow. This is from CNBC. Dow 30,000 could draw in investors from the sidelines with more stocks participating in the next leg. Yay! Let's get more people speculating in the stock market, although I understand that only about 20% of share sales now are actually people, and they're mocked by the traders. Traders are mocked by the traders as Muppets. That's what they think of you. This is from Patty Dom. The Dow burst through 30,000 for the first time Tuesday as investors dipped into stocks that will benefit from a recovery in the economy. Analysts say the psychological impact of the big milestone Dow number could be to encourage new investment in stocks. To what end exactly? Because apart from initial fundraising or for share issues in order for businesses to expand, the stock markets, the equity markets, they're pure speculation. And it is yet to be described to me adequately how speculation benefits the economy, benefits people. But back to CNBC, they expect investors to continue betting on cyclical stocks benefiting from economic recovery, particularly financials. But tech and growth should participate in the next leg of the rally as well. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who writes for The Telegraph, and is a very, very clever man. You might remember him for when he was writing for the American Spectator about Hillary Clinton and her various dealings, some of which were alleged to be, murderous. I remember him predicting that, around 2010, 2011, that you could expect this stock market bubble to go to, say, 2015, 2016, and then whoosh. And I thought that was ridiculous at the time because the values of these stocks, they were not bolstered by any real life data, but they just went up and up and up and up. And here it is near the end of 2020, and the bubble hasn't burst yet. Which rather led me to the thought that this has now become the first priority of any American presidential administration, is to just keep that bubble getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because a substantial adjustment downward in the stock market will be seen as a disastrous vote of no confidence in the economy. The Dow rode to 30,000 from 20,000 with a big lift from technology. The top three performers since the Dow crossed 20,000 in January 2017 were Apple, Microsoft, and Salesforce.com, all up more than 230% in that time frame. The Dow soared more than 400 points Tuesday. I feel like every time we get to a big milestone, people ask, why aren't I in the stock market? Said Scott Redler, partner with T3Live.com. Aren't those people called the greater fools? At this point, it feels like this is not going to be a sell the milestone. Redler said the investment community has widened to include younger investors Where are they getting their money from, I wonder? And these type of milestones are encouraging. It expects the market to continue to head higher, but its rapid run from the lows may mean it has to consolidate. And it could take a little longer, mind you, to reach Dow 40,000 than it was to climb to 30,000 from 20,000. Art Hogan, chief market strategist at National Securities, said investors like big round numbers. It's the knowledge that investors are doing well. It's not just on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. It's in the New York Times. It goes from Wall Street to Main Street. There is something that shows up on everybody's radar that shines a bigger light on it. Yes, I see that Art Hogan here is of the belief that what's good for Wall Street is good for Main Street, and it isn't. It simply isn't. But people are getting rich. Some people are getting rich. Again, from CNBC, Jim Cramer on Dow hitting 30,000. Beating COVID-19 will be like the end of prohibition. Yeehaw. I think that what's happening here is happy days are here again. Really? Happy days are here again when they're shutting down everything in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Michigan, etc. Well, happy days are here again, according to Jim Cramer. Somewhat justified, because if we can get this thing under control, it's going to be the end of prohibition. I think that people just kind of have belief, they have faith, and it tends to be the younger generation that has faith, he said on closing bell. The younger generation, the post 2008 generation that was told careers, you're not going to have careers anymore. Don't be greedy. We have this thing called a gig economy. Oh, why don't you rent out your apartment on Airbnb? Where would I sleep then? Yeah, why don't you drive an Uber? Do people make money driving Ubers? Why don't you deliver parcels for Amazon, where it is a race to the bottom for how much you get for delivering each parcel? Oh, yes, and don't forget, beans can be delicious if prepared properly, and cheap chalupas. So it's the younger generation that has faith in the market. Oh, wait, there's more. Science has triumphed. We don't speak enough on the network about how great science has done, because none of us thought that this was possible. Oh, so it's already factored into the market that all of these vaccines are just going to do great work. And despite the rush in getting them out to the public, that there are going to be no significant contraindications, and that everyone will just meekly submit to getting the jab, because if they don't, they won't get their travel passports. All this remains to be proved. In his first reaction to a banner day for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, where the blue chip index broke through and closed above the 30,000 level for the first time in history, the Mad Money host praised young investors and scientists for helping the market realize the moment. What exactly would have been the tremendous advances in science recently? I don't consider a slightly more brighter smartphone screen or a smaller bevel on your smartphone to be a significant increase in science. In terms of computer power doubling every 18 months, well, that sort of fell away rather some time ago. Did it not? Moore's Law, they call it. But Jim Cramer is a perpetually optimistic fellow with regard to the stock market, and it would be difficult to see how he could have his job if he were not perpetually optimistic. CNBC.com's Mackenzie Sigalos brings you the day's top business news headlines. And Elon Musk is richer than Bill Gates. I have not been hearing good things about the new Tesla cars, but the Tesla owners seem to be ferociously loyal and devoted to this company. I guess because they're early adopters. You know, if you bought a Chevy, a Ford, a Chrysler, a Toyota, whatever, and the car wasn't very well built, I think that you'd be far more likely to be vocal about your complaints than a Tesla owner. And this, I guess you could call this the Apple effect, because even to this day, that people who own Apple products are evangelists for it. And I've run into some of these people in publishing where they actually regard those who say use, the Wintel platform rather than Apple as being, well, not to put too fine a point on it, immoral. They seriously think this way. And why has the stock market done so well? Leave aside youth and science. Could it have something to do with the Federal Reserve? Could it have something to do with the Federal Reserve? Let's find some rather sarcastic comments here. Boom. This is from Greek Fire 23. Boom. All we needed was a global pandemic. Yeah, how does that work when we're told that nothing is ever going to be the same again? Oh, and people, going to movie theaters, going to sports events, going to concerts. Yeah, we're probably not going to have that in the future, not in the way we had it previously. How is that exactly good for the economy? I don't see how it could possibly be good for the economy. This is from Stalingrad and Porsky. All it took was $14 trillion in central bank liquidity, bailouts for the rich, millions out of work, and soon to be evicted. Love it. And again, from the same source, in reference to Elon Musk is now the second richest person in the world. Remember this, next time the cowards at the Fed tell you it's about Main Street and not Wall Street. Thanks to the Fed's unlimited QE bazooka in March of this year, members of Bloomberg's billionaire index have seen their wealth rise 23% or 1.3 trillion. So you see this, just politics as we previously knew it, does it still exist? Because, okay, so we got this global pandemic, and let's just assume for the, for argument's sake, that it really is a dire threat. Oh, and we're going to have all of these businesses and all of these people who are going to be judged to be inessential, that they're going to lose their jobs, that they're going to lose their businesses, and there's going to be some form of government bailouts, but of course they can't be permanent unless we move to a universal basic income, and then we'll have, universal peonage. So how is this as an excuse for making the richest people on earth, the richest people in the history of the world, even richer? Does that make any sense? It wouldn't have made sense to politicians of the past, but apparently that's just the received wisdom now. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, this is too funny. PBS's Yamiche, and Alcindor, is that her name? Biden's cabinet picks was like the Avengers. It felt like we are being rescued from the craziness, and now here are the superheroes to come and save us all. Universal mental retardation. There's no other way to describe it. No other way to describe it at all. Ooh, the superheroes. What, like Janet Yellen and John Kerry and the Secretary of State, who was one of the main pushers of the Russiagate hoax. These are the superheroes. Well, maybe they're not the superheroes that we need. Perhaps that they are the superheroes that we deserve. Let's have a look at the chat here. Thomas Henderson, 1/4 rise in billionaire assets, nothing to see here. Oh, Shoei3 says, I own Epic Games. Well, how about that? Okay. Did he say retardation? Whoa, that's a little far. I'm quoting the late great author Shiva Naipaul. The term mental retardation, it's perfectly justifiable. Old Major says Tesla is a scam. Check on Twitter, the Montana Skeptic, and TC Charts. I've seen a lot of this stuff, and again, I'm not sold on Tesla, but this is a dangerous opinion, because when you say you're not sold on Tesla, the reaction of people is, oh, I suppose that you wouldn't have been sold on the wheel either. Elon Musk is he's the Thomas Edison of our time. Well, and the Tesla, and maybe Einstein and Jesus Christ too. Musk seems to be like this far away from some sort of catastrophe. Some sort of catastrophe. When you look at this fellow's personal life, yeah, let's get involved with Amber Heard, because that just seems like a sensible thing to do. I mean, it's not like we have any examples of people getting involved with Amber Heard and it turning out very badly indeed, being ruined, say. Shoei says, where did you get the flowers? They are lovely. They are not real flowers, of course. And they are part of this place where I am staying, house sitting if you like. But they're not mine. Tim Humphreys says, does Mr. Musk have shares in Musk stick factories? Going on Twitter and talking about taking your company private, or getting high with Joe Rogan, yeah. None of these things are good ideas. William Hicks says, I wonder if Brent Scowcroft is still around. Maybe for the sake of bipartisanship, they could bring him back. Or maybe Kissinger. It's Grimes. Yes. Elon Musk has a child with this Grimes person, but he has also been involved with Amber Heard. Grimes, if I was the second richest man in the world, I'm pretty sure I could get a better looking girlfriend than Grimes. That's all I'm going to say. Nice suit. Is that a little Marks and Spencer's? I see. No, it's not. No, it's not from Marks and Spencer's. A little more upmarket than that. I'm not boasting because, well, I didn't pay for it, so. Head McNeck says, go easy on Musk. He's not a politician. Well, yeah, except that he is the CEO of a federally regulated business. Okay, is what a middle-aged elderly thing? Is being a little gloomy about Tesla. Halper says Tesla really is a badge of hip consumer dumb. Yo Mama says, I told my mom today I don't think I will take the vaccine, and she asked if I wanted to die. Is that what they say about the flu vaccine? Because there's lots and lots of people who don't take the flu vaccine. Gaming PC specs. No, I don't play games. Sorry. Although, after Gamergate, when you had all of these women say, women gamers, all these women gamers. I don't include, those games that involve gloopy purple falling down a screen or clicking on gloopy purple. I don't consider them to be games in the sense that, Gamergate was talking about games. I play solitaire and chess on the computer, but they're not games in the Gamergate sense, are they? They're not particularly complicated. I mean, in the sense that the rules aren't complicated. One doesn't, need to spend 10 hours learning the rules before. One plays them. Jokokin 666 says liquor sales banned in Pennsylvania by executive order. That's a mistake. That is a serious mistake because it is only, I would guess, pretty much continual drunkenness that has saved a large part of the North American population from despair or insurrection. But, okay, so moving on. Oh, yeah, let's, yes, we love Big Brother. And let's go to the Panic Report, aka the Drudge Report. Deaths highest since May, record hospitalizations. Airline industry is in final development phase of COVID passport. Long lines form at food banks across country ahead of Thanksgiving. States impose new rules, plead with public to stop spread. New York City will have checkpoints at bridges and crossings. I'm assuming this is people going into New York City and not leaving New York City. Oh, so you're giving people an excuse not to go to New York City? Oregon governor urges people to call cops on rule breakers. Oh, online school has sent Fs spiking 83%. Well, they'll deal with that problem easily. They'll just decide to turn Fs into C pluses. Oh, COVID less deadly could change as cases rise. You think so? Seriously? You just figured that out now? Oh, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Doctors warn side effects, no walk in park. Why do these people hate parks and beaches? Rural Americans stopped staying in, then the virus hit. Yep. It's the Hicks. It's the Hicks that are responsible. Maybe they'll find a way to blame the Hicks for the 45,000 people that the LoveGov Dish It 24/7 is very much responsible for. I mean, them ceasing to live. All righty. And in snitch news, this is from Etobicoke, which is just outside Toronto. Adamson Barbecue restaurant forced to close following order from City of Toronto. And yes, the Toronto Star had a horrified story. Apparently, there was a barbecue place open in suburban Toronto, and we can't have that. Toronto Public Health said the restaurant was ordered closed by Eileen Devia under Section 22 of the Health Protection and Promotion Act. Eileen Devia, eh? Again, another one of these health officers who is not an old stock Canadian. She was born in Boston and lived in the Philippines before 1972 and 1975. Her parents were both influential in the Filipino community in Toronto, laying the groundwork for what is now the Filipino Center Hospital. I mention this because these people from outside the Western world have traditionally no particular interest in liberty, in freedom. They come from a world where naked power is the only consideration. And I don't want those people being in charge of public health, but apparently they're immigrants, so they're better than the rest of us. And of course they should be in charge. And the Great Reset. I'm thinking that the elite, especially in Canada, might be getting a little worried about this because they said, conspiracy theory, nothing to see here, look away, or else. People aren't looking away. Canada sees more than 335,000 foreigners arrive despite Quarantine Act. Oh, so I guess continued high immigration, the highest immigration rate in the world, that's more important than your stated goal of stopping people from dying. This is from the Toronto Star, which is Canada's most influential newspaper. This is from their storied editorial board. There's no shortage of things to worry about as we lock down once again to stem the second wave of COVID-19, our health, our jobs, our future. The Great Reset isn't one of them. In real life, the Great Reset is a rather modest vision put forward by the World Economic Forum, best known for organizing an annual talk fest of business leaders and thinkers in the Swiss village of Davos. Oh, it is? Is it? Modest? Yeah. Well, let me read that again. In real life, the Great Reset is a rather modest vision put forward by the World Economic Forum. I think that the Toronto Star's understanding of modest is a little different than mine, or most people. Here's a piece by Ida Auken, which I've referred to before, who is a member of Parliament in Denmark, and it is datelined November the 11th, 2016. And it's from the World Economic Forum at weforum.org. Here's how life could change in my city by the year 2030. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. One by one, all of these things became free. So it ended up not making sense for us to own much. So this is the World Economic Forum telling you of their dream of the future, and it includes the abolition of private property. And the abolition of private property is a modest vision. These people cannot stop lying. This isn't a super secret organization, like the Bilderbergs or Bohemian Grove. The World Economic Forum is forthright about its plans for the future. But no, the Toronto Star and the Canadian government, they're just going to lie about it. Oh, the Toronto Star admits there's nothing secret about it. You can find all the details on the forum's website, including the abolition of private property and transhumanism. That's very modest too, transhumanism. In a nutshell, it argues that the pandemic has laid bare inequities in society and calls for post-COVID policies that reduce that inequality. Inequity is not the same thing as inequality. I don't know whether the brains trust at the Toronto Star understands that. There's not much there that a lot of others, including the Star's editorial board, haven't been saying for months, but that's not the end of it. In the wilder corners of the internet, the Great Reset has become code for an alleged plot by a cabal of globalistic elites to impose a new socialist order on the unwitting masses. In its most extreme form, the theory posits that the pandemic was deliberately let loose by those same elites looking for an excuse to carry out their nefarious plans. The conspiracy mongers had a field day last week when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke virtually to a UN meeting and said the pandemic provided an opportunity for a, quote, reset, unquote, of economic and social policies. Aha! Cried the conspiracists. Trudeau's clearly part of the secret plot to destroy capitalism. That's the kind of thing you expect from the tinfoil hat set that looks from the darker crevices of social media. Disappointing, sure, but no surprise. So they are lying outrageously, and I'll demonstrate very shortly just how outrageously they're lying. But the people who point out the truth are, evil. People who lurk in the darker crevices of social media. But a one on earth is a prominent member of the Conservative Party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, doing by giving oxygen to that very line of thinking. He posted a petition on his website under the scary all caps headline, Stop the Great Reset. It says global financial elites are pushing the agenda and Canadians must fight back against global elites preying on the fears and desperation of people to impose their power grab, protect our freedom, it concludes. Tens of thousands have signed. He's not just reaching out to mainstream conservatives who have a reasonable disagreement with Trudeau's preference for vaguely progressive policies urged to kill rising. He's sending a message to those way over on the far right who traffic in hateful, baseless theories about global conspiracies. Poilievre's response so far has been, in effect, who me? Because it's quite true that the World Economic Forum does propose a great reset under the patronage, it should be said, of that noted wild-eyed extremist, Prince Charles. Oh, the same Prince Charles who was bestest buddies with Jimmy Savile? That guy? And it's true that Trudeau has used some of the same language about a reset and reimagining the way society works to benefit those too often left behind. If this is a conspiracy, it's an awfully public one. Well, that's because it is not. Well, it's not a secret conspiracy, as James Delingpole likes to say. It's not a conspiracy if they tell you what they are doing. It would also be a very ineffective one. The World Economic Forum is a rather pretentious talk shop. Oh, and that's why Trudeau goes there. That's why Merkel goes there. That's why Macron goes there. That's why Donald Trump was there. Huh. Because it's a complete waste of time. As for Trudeau, to the extent that he's mused about a reset, he's talked about strengthening the social safety net, addressing growing inequality, and shifting to greener, more sustainable policies. You can disagree with all that, of course, but destroying capitalism as we know it, it ain't. Abolishing private property, that goes even further than destroying capitalism. Liars. Liars, liars, liars. Katie Telford is chief of staff to Prime Minister Trudeau. And I believe that she is a well-connected young woman. Let's see. Oh, yes, her husband, Rob Silver. There's been some nasty talk in the media about conflict of interest. Yeah. She's a lifetime political hack. Oh, she's married to Rob Silver, a consultant for Public Affairs Agency, a PR spiv, and a former regular Power and Politics panelist. Yeah. That's if you thought that the United States was a closed society, get a look at Canada. She said she repeated the charge made in the Toronto Star that Pierre Poilievre is flirting with the far right who traffic in hateful, baseless theories about global conspiracies. Bill Brasky, he responded to this with a page from the Prime Minister's own government website. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales and the Commonwealth Group of Permanent Representatives to the United Nations regarding financing for development and the Great Reset Initiative. That is a direct quotation. Also, what is Justin Trudeau's new slogan? Well, it's Building Back Better, which just happens to be the same slogan of the Joe Biden campaign. And it just happens to be the slogan of Boris Johnson's conservatives. So, here we go. And this is dated when? June the 11th. COVID-19, this is from the Prime Minister's office, is a rapidly evolving global challenge. The government of Canada is working closely with international partners to minimize the economic impact of the virus. Yes, by killing the economy. That would definitely be the best way to minimize the economic impact of the virus, and to ensure that the global recovery is focused on building back stronger, more sustainable economies. How about that, eh? How about that? Yes, as I say, if you find what I was saying about the goals of the World Economic Forum to be hyperbolic, outlandish, unbelievable, made up, you can go to the World Economic Forum's website and look for this piece by, I don't know whether this is a man or a woman, but Ida, I-D-A, Auken, A-U-K-E-N. Laurie Goldstein writes in the Toronto Sun, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau clearly believes in the philosophy of the Great Reset espoused by the World Economic Forum. Criticizing Trudeau for that does not make anyone part of a right-wing conspiracy. I've been to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in January as a reporter, where the world's business and political elites gather in the luxurious ski resort of Davos, nestled in the Swiss Alps. Founded in 1970 by globalist Klaus Schwab, a German-Swiss academic who's still going strong, there's nothing secretive about its agenda. It believes in global governance and in global wealth redistribution, arguing capitalism is inequitable, ironic given that collectively its attendees are responsible for that system. Trudeau has been a keynote speaker at the WEF twice since becoming PM. Why would Trudeau be a keynote speaker twice at a pretentious talk shop? Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney are listed as members of its board of trustees. One of its earliest supporters was the late Canadian globalist Maurice Strong, a remarkably sinister man. That's my comment, not Goldstein's. The Great Reset Initiative is the theme of the WEF's 2021 meeting, delayed until May and to be held in Lucerne because of COVID-19. It will argue the pandemic and climate change demonstrate the need for global governance, because individual nations are incapable of addressing them effectively or equitably under capitalism as it now exists. As the National Post's Peter Foster writes in his book, How Dare You?, a collection of his columns, this is nothing new. Quote, the key to WEF thinking, that is the not-so-secret agenda of the organization, is that globalization requires corresponding global governance. WEF founder and president Klaus Schwab wrote in the organization's 1998 annual report that the Asian financial crisis in 1997, and who was responsible for that? George Soros. What a coincidence. Had brought every salient question to the fore. How are we going to govern globalism? This will be a top collective priority in the 21st century. These clowns wrecked the world economy in 2007, 2008, almost brought economic activity to a halt, and apparently we have to give them even more power. The WEF says of its 2021 meeting, the COVID-19 crisis and the political, economic, and social disruptions it has caused is fundamentally changing the traditional context for decision-making as we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery. This initiative will offer insights to help inform all those determining the future state of global relations, the direction of national economies, the priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and the management of a global commons. Trudeau had said, this pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change. Paul Wells in Maclean's The Great Reset is mostly just liberals blowing off steam, mostly. Yeah. So this column is on the one hand, this, on the other hand, that. Here's the Wall Toronto Star citing academics who say Poilievre is playing to conspiracy theories. And here's Le Devoir citing more academics who say the same thing. First, about Maxime Bernier, leader of the Maxime Bernier Keeps Losing Party, the first politician to tweet about the reset video, and then a few days later about Poilievre. But both newspapers' reports say two correct things that are worth pointing out. First, that the Prime Minister did indeed brag to other world leaders about seizing a massive global die-off as a chance to reimagine economic systems. Nor is Trudeau alone. There's a great reset page on the website of the WEF, or as the Toronto Sun editors like to call it, an annual meeting of global political and business elites in Davos, Switzerland, a luxurious ski resort. Well, it is that. What is the other joke that Delingpole has made? That it's a place where billionaires tell millionaires how ordinary people live. Tucker Carlson and the sort of loopy made-up social media rants that wind up getting debunked on the Snopes website. I'm going to be reviewing a book on the Book Club Friday by Claire Ellis called The Blackening of Europe 1. You want to talk about conspiracy theories? You want to talk about the Fabian Society? You want to talk about globalists going back more than a century? You want to talk about the Pan-European movement or the Eurabian movement or the Eurafrican movement, or the activity of people like Jürgen Habermas to destroy nations through immigration? I'm sick of people complaining about conspiracy theories. We have suffered so much because of them, so many of them which were in plain view. But it's the essence of a Canadian journalist that he not really having strong opinions about anything. We'll just muddle through somehow. We'll muddle through with more of the same, much more of the same, only faster and harder. That's what counts as moderation in my benighted country. And I guess that's what's going to count as moderation in the United States if, God forbid, Biden becomes president and the Avengers take over. This is from Canada.com, Tasha Karedin. Let's try a great reset that conservatives can love. Now, what might that be? After 9 months of COVID restrictions, some Canadians are reaching peak crazy. In Rosemère, Quebec, a flash mob of anti-maskers held a dance protest in a local mall. How is that peak crazy? In Kelowna, BC, barefaced demonstrators. Oh no, they weren't wearing masks. Burn the witch. Called for truth, freedom, choice, and to lock up Provincial Chief Medical Officer Bonnie Henry. And then there's a Conservative MP, Pierre Poilievre, flirting with the conspiracy crowd after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tossed the term reset into his latest word salad. Perhaps she could have done 5 minutes research on Google or another search engine to discover the formal official statement that Justin Trudeau made using the phrase Great Reset. Not just reset, but Great Reset. These cringeworthy spectacles distract from the important contribution conservatives could make to a post-pandemic society. No, conservatives make no important contribution to any society, and typically they don't believe in society. For yes, a reset is coming, and no, it's not the one QAnon or its ilk are worried about, says Tasha Karedin. Governments around the world are broke. Global debt has soared by over 15 trillion US in the first 3 quarters of 2020, hitting a record US 272 trillion debt in developed markets. Well, you get the point. In these circumstances, big government becomes a big fantasy. I'm not so sure about that. It was only a little over a generation ago that there was a panic about deficit spending in the West, an absolute panic. And then in 2020, in the year 2000, roughly, Alan Greenspan decided that he'd abolish the business cycle with ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. And if that's not good enough, we'll just create money, quantitative easing, and helicopter it over banks. So I'm not so sure that big government is going to be a big fantasy anytime soon. Of course, it could all collapse very quickly. The time is right for a great reset, a reset to a smaller state. And while conservatives may not hold the levers in Ottawa, levers of powers in Ottawa yet, they do so in 6 provinces where they could make a big difference. No. Until there is some sort of catastrophe, government is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There's lots of reasons for that. But to assume that people who would even vote for the Conservative Party, even consider themselves conservative, are in favor of lower spending, they are not in favor because it is not popular. It is simply not popular. Again, lots of reasons for this. One of which is that due to changing modes of discipline and government intervention in the economy, in the family, in schools, a large part of the population of both Canada and the United States has become infantilized and is not really capable of looking after themselves, each other, their families, etc., etc., etc. This will end eventually, but it will not end with voters choosing lower spending because it's the war of all against all. If gibs are being handed out to all these groups, then you must demand gibs as well, or else you're going to fall behind disastrously. The aforementioned James Delingpole writes in Breitbart, the Green agenda is the Great Reset. One of the few political leaders who gets this is President Donald Trump. On Sunday, he warned in a video statement from the White House to the Group of 20 summit hosted by Saudi Arabia that the Paris Climate Agreement was not designed to save the environment, it was designed to kill the economy. This is fair comment for reasons I have outlined many times before. If the US had remained a signatory, it would have ceded a huge competitive advantage to favored economies such as India and China to no useful purpose. After all, as Bjorn Lomborg once calculated, even if every country in the world sticks to its carbon reduction targets agreed at Paris, the best case scenario is that it might reduce global warming by the end of the century by 0.17 degrees Celsius. This is a difference so small it will be barely measurable and certainly not noticeable at a cost to the global economy of perhaps $1.5 trillion per year. Yet Joe Biden, in the event that he becomes president, has promised that he will drag the U.S. back into this frivolous, destructive, eye-wateringly expensive deal. One might well ask the same question of the policies recently announced by the government in my own country, the United Kingdom. Here, Boris Johnson's Conservative administration has decreed that diesel and petrol-powered cars must be phased out from 2030. That is 10 years from now. As part of a 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, including more wind farms, more bird abattoirs, more green finance, more money spent on public transport and cycle lanes, more investment in dubious and so far highly unsuccessful technologies like carbon capture. Yes, carbon capture. It's all part of the war, the ceaseless war against mankind's eternal enemy, carbon. Delingpole continues, do these sound like conservative policies to you? Do you think all those working class red wall voters in the Midlands and the North who lent their votes to the Conservatives in 2019, many for the first time, did so in the hope that Johnson would drive up their heating bills or confiscate their petrol cars or force them to buy electric ones they could never hope to afford? Does this sound like a recipe for an economic revival, higher taxes, more government subsidies after the slump caused by the government's draconian lockdown policies? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I have a magnificent range of very competitively priced bridges I would like to sell you. One theory has it that it's all down to the influence of Boris's green activist girlfriend, Carrie Simons, her worryingly powerful chum in the House of Lords, Zach Goldsmith, and to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Michael Gove, who was memorably pictured last year with a bunch of fellow eco-loon MPs drooling over the doom goblin Greta Thunberg. But it's actually much more sinister than that, and global. It's not just in the US and the UK that this embrace of the green agenda is taking place. It's happening across Europe and around the world, from Australia to Canada. In terms of saving the environment, it makes no sense. Why would you erect more bat-chomping, bird-slicing eco-crucifixes if you cared about wildlife and nature? In terms of delivering a better world for voters, it makes no sense either. It will just mean more restrictions, higher taxes, higher energy bills, less foreign travel, less freedom, and so on. But of course, the less freedom part doesn't seem to be a problem, at least as of today. If you look at what they used to call global warming, and then climate change, and then climate emergency, and climate extinction, it's funny. The less people cared about it, the more dire the descriptions of this supposed phenomenon became. Again, my hypothesis is, now you remember that earlier in this year, when COVID arrived on our shores, we were told from everyone de Blasio, Cuomo, etc., not a problem. Go to your Chinese New Year's celebrations, which would now be called, super spreaders. And because don't worry about masks, they don't work. The real virus is xenophobia. It's racism. But then we saw a shift to, oh my God, we are going to die. And since, oh my God, we're all going to die, we better change everything. And of course, in terms of carbon emissions, they have fallen radically. In the United States this year, guess what? Because the economy has cratered. And what we have seen in the United States and elsewhere in the Western world in 2020 is just a taste of what this Green New Deal would be. It's just a taste. Because there is absolutely no evidence that these green forms of energy will work at scale. None whatsoever. Let's go to the chat, see what's happening there. Tax cuts. Yeah. Tax cuts are not all that popular anymore. Certainly when they involve rich people. Of course, they're going to get more money because of the progressive income tax system. Chogakin 666 says, I recommend the series Chernobyl. It's extremely well done. I haven't seen it. I was put off because they decided to pretty much invent a female scientist and make her, the kick-ass babe who saves the day. I would highly recommend Piers Paul Reed's book on Chernobyl, which is based on the facts and on dozens or hundreds of interviews with the people who were involved. Thomas Henderson says, wealth is being drawn from the bottom to the top. Yes, that's how mass immigration works. Cheap nannies and landscaping and low prices. It's very, very good for rich people in the upper middle class. This is not good for people in the middle class, lower middle class, the working poor, not good at all. But I guess, with Biden allegedly becoming the next president, the elite can simply go back to its smug, calm, and measured view of the middle class, lower than upper middle class, and everyone below them who's not on welfare as the scum of the earth. Don't play Fortnite, not a gamer. Alex Delarge says shareholders are the most important constituency. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think that members of the executive are the most important constituency for business. That's why they continually say buying back shares in massive amounts in order to line their own pockets. Can decline be perpetual? Well, let's look at the Dark Ages. How long were the Dark Ages before we get the Middle Ages, the High Middle Ages? What are we looking at? 500 years or so? That's a long time. That's a long time. William Hicks says, if these politicians embrace the Green New Deal, the environmental impact of the solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries will make the fossil fuels look clean. They are extremely inefficient. Tom Anderson says, KMG, when will the lockdown insanity end? Well, if Trump stays on as president after January 20th, it will end in the United States very quickly because the LoveGov and the mayor of New Jersey, the governor of New Jersey, the governor of Pennsylvania, and the like, will realize that they are kicking against the pricks, or more to the point, smashing their heads. No, more to the point, further still, smashing their voters' heads against the wall. Yo Mama says, Kevin, did you ever play Pong? Indeed, I did. I was first introduced to this at a party in West Vancouver, and there must have been rich people there because they had the table, right? The table that you sit down on either side of, and it's got all the knobs built in. And let's see. I remember it was at the time that the first Pretenders album came out. So late 70s, and everyone was transfixed by it, despite how simple it was just new. It was similar to the first time I saw MTV. I was visiting my sister, and she had a satellite dish which got MTV. This was years before Canada got much music. And it got back to some place at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be dragged away around 1 o'clock in the afternoon because they've set rock songs to music and they just play them one after the other. I guess MTV hasn't played videos for years. I guess they still play a few, but it's all reality shows now, right? Emmett Kelly's Earth says, well, you know what Herbert Stein said. Yes, indeed. Something that can't last forever won't. The difficulty with predictions about, collapse are that, again, what in Tunisia, it was some vendor immolating himself that led to the Arab Spring. You just never know what it is going to be that is going to set these things off. Typically, some form of self-destructive activity, like those Buddhist monks setting themselves on fire in Vietnam in the 1960s. Chogokin 666, German Antifa joined police to oppose COVID skeptics. Yes, I've seen the video of the fellow live streaming, the cops kicking down his door. Justin Proto says, and if governments weren't there to prop up banks and other industries close to the money spigot, inequality would decrease. Well, they talk about inequality, but all of their policies only serve to increase inequality. But they talk up a good game. And of course, again, I'm going to be talking more about this in detail on Friday, reading Claire Ellis's book. It just hit me like a ton of bricks that so-called NGOs, non-government organizations, they've been around for a long time. And they're poison. They're absolute poison. And I would say that it maybe the first thing that any right-wing government, I'm not going to say conservative, and you know why, the first thing that any right-wing government should do upon taking power is to get a complete list of all NGOs receiving money from governments and zero them out. I don't care whether it's, the American Cancer Society or any of these groups. You look at, the Lung Association. They're engaged in political activity. overwhelmingly. It's not about people getting x-rays or any about that stuff. It's all politics. NGOs, they're not businesses, and they're not charities. They're astroturf organizations. The government support them because the NGOs come up quite regularly with policy recommendations that the government wants. But then they can say, oh, look, this independent, disinterested organization says that we need the Great Reset. And look at all the experts involved. Look at all the science therein. Thomas Henderson, bureaucracy is self-serving, self-selecting, and self-aggrandizing. Indeed, it is. Indeed, it is. Steve says lots of fraud goes on in NGOs that doesn't make the news. My friend works in a nonprofit accounting firm and sees it a lot. Oxfam was for, decades, one of the most respected charities in the world. Of course, they do a lot of political work as well. And then we found out about this enormous sex scandal. I recall a commercial that Oxfam ran some decades ago, which is perhaps the most offensive thing that I've ever seen on television. They enlisted no less than Sir Peter Ustinov and Dame Maggie Smith, and there were a bunch of dead people on a staircase. And what they actually said was, if you do not give money to Oxfam, like, you were condemning these people to death. I wonder how successful that campaign was. You can look this up, in the annals of worst advertising campaigns of all time. Schlitz brought out a very Schlitz beer, which no longer exists, I don't believe. It was kind of a staple in America for decades. They brought out a very aggressive campaign in the 1970s, which was dubbed "Drink Schlitz or We'll Kill You." Needless to say, not a success. Emmett Kelly Zer says the Buddhist monk's self-immolation led to the Gem coup, who sank and eventually to direct American combat participation in South Vietnam. No go for NGOs, nice mantra, says Thomas Henderson. I've always wondered, that John Kennedy signed off on the murder of the Gem family, and I can't help but wonder whether his own murder shortly thereafter was a form of cosmic payback for this. Why is Rage Against the Machine trending? Can anyone help me out there? Oh, yes. Yeah. Panic in Alberta, and Jason Kenney is being bullied into shutting the province down completely. None of the previous lockdowns have worked, but third time, fourth time, fifth time, 27th time is the charm. From Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News, the head of the World Health Organization has suggested that coronavirus restrictions will continue even after a vaccine has been made widely available. Well, we've humiliated you. Why would we want to stop doing that? Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus made the comments on Twitter after news broke of several new vaccines said to be effective in fighting COVID-19 coming closer to fruition. This is a quote. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we knew that a vaccine would be essential for bringing the pandemic under control, but it's important to emphasize that a vaccine will complement the other tools we have, not replace them. Is that going to fly? Because we've been hearing this from Trudeau and over again from all these people. You're going to have to suffer till we get the vaccine. Now we're being told, okay, now we have the vaccine, but you're going to keep on suffering. Are people going to put up with that? Tedros continued, initial supply of COVID-19 vaccines will be limited, so health workers, older people, and other at-risk populations will be prioritized. That will hopefully reduce the number of deaths and enable health systems to cope. But the virus will still have a lot of room to move. A vaccine on its own will not end the COVID-19 pandemic. We will still need to continue surveillance, testing, isolating, and caring for cases, tracing and quarantining contacts, engaging communities, whatever the hell that means, encouraging individuals to be careful. Encouraging individuals to be careful means, in practice, scaring them to death and shutting them up in their residences. Paul Joseph Watson continues, as we have exhaustively highlighted, numerous other prominent individuals have asserted that rolling lockdowns, mask wearing, social distancing, and other restrictions are here to stay after the pandemic is over. In his book, COVID-19, wait for it, The Great Reset, World Economic Forum globalist Klaus Schwab asserts that the world will never, that's a quote, return to normal, despite him admitting that coronavirus, quote, doesn't pose a new existential threat, unquote. A senior U.S. Army official also said that mask wearing and social distancing will become permanent, while CNN's international security editor, Nick Patton Walsh, asserted that the mandatory wearing of masks will become permanent, just part of life, and that the public would need to come to terms with it. Nick Patton Walsh. I'm just sort of imagining here in Minecraft things that could be done with masks and Nick Patton Walsh, all in good fun, of course. Commenting on the issue, Joseph Massey said, Ghebreyesus' statement reaffirmed the fact that COVID lockdowns are more about social engineering than ending a pandemic. Quote, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, nor am I a COVID denier, but people like this make it difficult not to believe that lockdowns are more than social engineering than they are about stopping the virus. A vaccine is not a complement to being isolated and muzzled like an animal. Don Braid, who's been a political reporter in Alberta since roughly the beginning of recorded time, was lambasting Jason Kenney. I'm not a fan of Jason Kenney, as you may well know, but fair's fair. The United Conservative Party has waited too long to get tough with COVID-19. We're the worst hit province in Canada. Last chance to act is now. The last chance. Or else what? Everyone is going to die? Waited too long to get tough with COVID-19. Well, I sent him my standard response. COVID-19 is not sentient and has no agency. It cannot be coerced or bargained with. It is a virus and acts like all other viruses. Spare us your pathetic fallacy. Ooh, who's afraid of the Belgian police? This is from Chris Tomlinson at Breitbart. Belgian Interior Minister Annelies Verlinden has warned her fellow countrymen that police will knock on doors at Christmas if needed to enforce Wuhan coronavirus measures. I wonder how many of the people whose doors are knocked on will respond with the French or Flemish equivalent of put a sock in it. Yes, I'm looking at a picture of this woman. Okay. Is it all female cabinet ministers in Europe now? It certainly seems that way. The Interior Minister said that law enforcement would make sure to enforce the strict Wuhan coronavirus lockdown measures, even on Christmas Day, saying that if necessary, if there's a lot of noise, for example, the police will knock on doors. Verlinden added that police would not, however, be seeking to unlawfully enter police's homes, saying, according to Le Soir, getting into homes is not a priority. The law doesn't allow that either. Well, couldn't you just make faces at them through the glass? It sounds like a lot of fun, actually. Yes, what was that Babylon Bee had a couple of days ago? The California Governor Newsom alerted to people breaking COVID restrictions by the laughter of children. I thought that was quite good. Okay. Yes, let's go to lockdown skeptics. And lockdown 3.0. Wait a minute. But isn't it just the second wave? Are we up to the third wave now? Yesterday, Boris Johnson rang in from self-isolation to give his much-awaited briefing on the winter COVID plan. Who's self-isolating? Isn't Trudeau self-isolating? Boris Johnson is self-isolating. I think Jason Kenney is self-isolating. Have any of these politicians died from COVID? Didn't that kind of suggest Tom Hanks and his wife? They seem to do just fine. The government is still working with devolved administrations on the plans for a semi-free Christmas. But we learned from Nicola Sturgeon's daily press conference yesterday that they will not in Scotland include Hogmanay. Who would have thought we'd see a Scottish National Party First Minister axing a Scottish tradition? The Mail Online reports that fans may soon to be able to return to stadiums, albeit in limited numbers. Manchester United versus PSG will likely be the first match to welcome them back, but there still could be rules to be followed on singing, shouting, and drinking. It is timely that in the run-up to the next gear chain in the British government's endless drive to defeat the virus, Frontiers in Public Health has published a peer-reviewed study of COVID mortality outcomes. First, the context: we aimed at characterizing the non-viral parameters that were most associated with death rate. We tested major indices from 5 domains: demography, public health, economy, politics, environment, and their potential associations with COVID-19 mortality during the first 8 months of 2020. The studied countries, from the 188 countries that have declared at least one case, only those counting a minimum of 10 deaths due to COVID-19. And the conclusion: countries that already experienced a stagnation or regression of life expectancy with high income and NCD rates had the highest price to pay. The burden was not alleviated by more stringent public decisions. Inherent factors have predetermined that COVID-19 mortality. Understanding them may improve prevention strategies by increasing population resilience through better physical fitness and immunity. Yes, lockdowns don't work, but we knew that already. But everyone else was doing it, Mom. That's the argument that we're getting. Yeah, but it didn't work the first time, and it didn't work the second time, or all the other times. Are you doubting me? Readers will recall the marvelous speech delivered by Roger Hodkinson, a speech which is routinely suppressed by YouTube and other social media. Ex-chairman of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons Examination Committee in General Pathology in Ottawa, and a former assistant professor to some health officials working for the government of Alberta last week, telling them their strategy was all wrong. It's now gone from YouTube, of course, but you can still catch it at BitChute. Worth listening to. It's short and punchy. Yes, that is Hodkinson, not Hodgkinson. Not like the singer from that English band. What were they called? Breakfast in America, that band? Lockdown Skeptics has made contact with Dr. Hodkinson, and we're publishing a 4-part series by him on the pandemic, with the first part published today. Part 1 is a scene setter called Who Failed and Why, in which Dr. Hodkinson discusses the origins of the virus in China and the disastrous initial reaction by public health authorities. Yes, and I will definitely look into this. Qantas, Australia's largest airline, is planning to make proof of having had vaccination a condition of travel. And will all the other airlines follow suit? Will they be forced to do so? Facts about the pots and pans protest in Denmark and the change in the proposed epidemic law remained hard to verify, as one reader notes. It is so strange that there's hardly any coverage on mainstream news regarding the protests in Denmark. In the Twitter stream, there are a few people saying it is not true. Hardly anyone backs up their story with a link to anything official. It all comes back to Twitter and the local. So let's move on from that. Let's move on to the U.S. election. This is from The Guardian today by Martin Pengelly. Donald Trump continued to gravitate towards his new right-wing media allies at TV channels One American News Network and Newsmax on Tuesday, even as heavyweight supporters Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Rush Limbaugh distanced themselves from the president's attempts to overturn his election defeat by Joe Biden. Did they use that language in the year 2000 about Al Gore's attempt to overturn his election defeat by George W. Bush? If they did, I certainly don't recall. On Fox News Monday, Ingraham said unless the legal situation changes in a dramatic and unlikely manner, Joe Biden will be inaugurated on the 20th of January. Tucker Carlson claimed the 2020 election was not fair, but admitted Trump had lost it. On his radio show, Limbaugh attacked Trump's lawyers in Pennsylvania, led by Rudy Giuliani, for failing to provide any evidence to back claims of voter fraud in the state. You announce massive bombshells, he said, then you better have some bombshells. On Tuesday morning, Trump pinned Carlson's monologue to his Twitter page, but he also retweeted a string of messages by Randy Quaid. In one, the actor echoed Carlson's claims about trust in election infrastructure, demanding an in-person only paper ballot revote. Randy Quaid was hiding out in Canada, my country, for quite some time. He claimed that he was on the run from what I believed he called the Hollywood star whackers, if memory serves. Let's say, a little Wikipedia has to say, personal life. Okay, broke up with his wife, etc., etc., etc. Suing the producers of Brokeback Mountain. October 2010, Quaid and his wife moved to Vancouver, where they sought asylum protection, saying that they feared for their lives in the United States. They were arrested for outstanding warrants in the U.S. after they were granted bail. Okay. 2013, request for permanent resident status as the husband of a Canadian, request denied. He then lived in Montreal, where his passport was revoked. To be deported in 2015. Oh, okay, so he moved to Vermont in 2015. Voided the extradition request, whereupon the Quaids were released and allowed to remain in Vermont without conditions. In principle, the Quaids were subject to arrest should he travel to another state, yet in 2017 they vacationed in California without incident. He and his wife plan to make Vermont their permanent home, since his wife grew up there. I would gather then that he is no longer afraid of the Hollywood star whackers, or that he's patched up his differences with the said whackers. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So Fox News has, except for Hannity, has turned on Donald Trump. And how's that working out for them? Well, let's take a look. This is from Jim Hoft. At the Gateway Pundit, 3 weeks ago, Fox News was riding high. Its ratings had never been higher, thanks to Donald Trump and his supporters. Then the fraudulent election took place, and Fox immediately disowned their audience. Trump supporters were no longer welcome. And if anyone dared to question the fraudulent election, they were immediately mocked and sneered at. The latest ratings numbers were released today for the formerly Trump-friendly network, and oh my God, Fox News crashed. The viewership at Fox News just 2 weeks ago is larger than CNN and MSNBC combined. Now look at the numbers. CNN is crushing Fox News in the key 25 to 54 demographic in every single hour last Friday, and MSNBC beat every Fox show except Tucker Carlson. This is a complete collapse. And is there anything new from Donald Trump? Well, there's a tweet from half an hour ago. Should President Trump concede to Biden? Poll results, no. 98.9%, yes. 1.1% total votes, 193,000. This is from Newsmax. He's not going to... Oh, this is good. He retweeted this from Daily Wire. Experts listed 27 House races as toss-ups. Republicans won all 27. Yeah, I was hoping that... I said something foolish, that if the pollsters were gravely embarrassed by their 2020 election predictions, in effect, we've seen the last of them, or at least the last of the media always leading with polls, giving us the meta picture rather than looking at news. But no, the media has just decided we love our polls. It means we can be lazy and do less work, and we're going to keep them. Trump tweeted an hour ago, why isn't the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, a so-called Republican, allowing us to look at signatures on envelopes for verification? We will find tens of thousands of fraudulent and illegal votes. This could also be very helpful to Senator David Perdue and Senator Loeffler. Why is he afraid of Stacey Abrams? Good question. We don't need the ballots. We only need the signed envelopes. Well, as I predicted, Trump, he's not going to concede. It's not going to happen. This is from RT. Well, what do you know? It says, we will never concede. Trump doubles down on fraud claims after the GSA greenlights power transfer, says lawsuits moving ahead. Just for the record, the General Services Administration does not select the President of the United States. From Steve Watson at Summit News, in a deranged segment, CNN pundit Douglas Brinkley predicted that President Trump will form a shadow government and hold his own counter-inauguration in January in an attempt at sedition and an overthrow of U.S. democracy. Always be projecting, lefties. Sedition, eh? That's a good one. That's a good one. From Jim Hofta, Gateway Pundit, is happening. Former Overstock CEO Patrick Byrne. The election was rigged deeply. They used the drop and roll technique. From the Federalist Papers, watch Dr. Robert Epstein. Joe Biden supporters shows evidence the system was rigged against one candidate. From the Gateway Pundit, Lynn Wood drops a late-night bombshell. Would somebody ask my never-to-be friend Brad Raffensperger if he has seen this tape of election fraud at State Farm Arena in Fulton County, Georgia? I'm not going to go into all that much detail about election fraud. You can go to the Gateway Pundit, Conservative Treehouse, National File, The Federalist, Citizen Free Press, Revolver.news for many, many examples. I will go to a J5 killer, however. Yes, again from Newsmax, Trump, I will never concede, calling it the most corrupt election in American political history. Quackocracy tweets, if you read this and you still insist there was no fraud, you're just a dumb liar. Cheds at Big Cheds said, of course not. It's weeks later and zero evidence of widespread fraud has been found. Not only that, it was the cleanest election in U.S. history. Not one single theory has survived scrutiny. They've all been debunked. The cleanest election in U.S. history. They spent a lot of time in the 19th century there. They take deep, hard looks at 1912, 1916, 1920. When people say things like that, you know that they're lying. How long would it take for intensive scrutiny of all the elections in U.S. history to determine that 2020 was the cleanest election? They just didn't do it. They just asserted it was. J5 Killer responds, this is what they're telling themselves. They're either liars, idiots, or the most duped people in America. And finally, Trump will be president until at least January of 2025. I want to talk about Al Sharpton and his remarkable career. That Al Sharpton has been associated with race baiting and cop baiting, going back to the beginning of his career when he was large and wore tracksuits. He's much more elegantly dressed now. It's interesting to remember that Pat Buchanan, when he was fired from MSNBC because of a book that he'd written talking about the Great Replacement, that who was he replaced by? He was replaced by the Reverend Al Sharpton. Now, a curious choice, wouldn't you say? Leo Leibowitz writes in the tablet the past week in the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, an umbrella group uniting 125 local Jewish communities and 17 national Jewish organizations, sent an email to its followers proudly announcing that it is signed on as a partner in the virtual March on Washington this week, an event organized by Al Sharpton, because last week also marked the 29th anniversary of the Crown Heights riot. It is worth it to stop and recall that among his many distinctions, MSNBC pundit and advisor who reportedly regularly speaks to Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, collector of innumerable sateen suits, Al Sharpton is also currently America's only living pogrom leader. After a car driven by a Hasidic Jew accidentally swerved and struck a young African-American boy, killing him, hundreds of the neighborhood's black residents rioted in the streets, chanting "Death to the Jews," as well as looting stores, attacking anyone who was visibly Jewish, and ripping mezuzahs off of door posts. Sharpton was quick to arrive on the scene, leading a march in which participants burned an Israeli flag and called to kill all Jews. At the young boy's funeral a few days later, Sharpton delivered a eulogy that borrowed heavily from the protocols of the elders of Zion, saying that the Jewish residents in the neighborhood practiced apartheid and were there only to further the Jewish global grip on money and power. He ended by ominously shouting, "Pay for your deeds." So why would the Anti-Defamation League be so friendly with Al Sharpton? It doesn't make any sense to me. But here's another example of something similar. This is from Jack Hadfield today from the National File. A Holocaust museum in Florida has opened up a photographical exhibit dedicated to George Floyd, an alleged fraudster and convicted felon who died in police custody earlier this year, receiving criticism and derision online as a result. The Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center in Orlando, Florida, is housing the exhibit entitled "Uprooting Prejudice: Faces of Change," which features 45 photos of different individuals reacting to the death of George Floyd. Floyd died in Minneapolis police custody in May, with his death sparking riots, looting, and civil unrest across the country. Lisa Bachman, the assistant director of the Holocaust Center, said the exhibit was designed so that people could come and look these individuals in the eye. The photographs, which include an image of the father of Michael Brown Jr., who was shot while running towards a police officer in 2014, were all taken by John Knowltner. Could it be that organized Jewry in the United States has come to the conclusion that we had better cling on to the blacks because we have lost so much victim status? I don't really think that this is a wise policy for them, but this is the one that they have chosen. This is from The Federalist by Jordan Davidson. Anti-Israel activist groups are sponsoring a panel discussion on dismantling anti-Semitism, featuring New York Times columnist Peter Beinart, who previously called for the, quote, "end of Israel," unquote, as a panelist. Despite promoting anti-Israel rhetoric in the past, Beinart, joined by Representative Rashida Tlaib, Barbara Ransby, and Mark Lamont Hill, is slated to speak at a discussion titled "Dismantling Anti-Semitism: Winning Justice." Sponsored by anti-Israel groups such as United Against Hate, Jewish Currents, Jewish Voice for Peace, the Arab American Institute, and the Foundation for Middle East Peace. Just a few months ago, Beinart openly called for the undermining of Israel and Zionism by creating an equal state shared by the Palestinians in a New York Times op-ed titled "I No Longer Believe in a Jewish State." Quote, "It's time to abandon the traditional two-state solution and embrace the goal of equal rights for Jews and Palestinians. It's time to imagine a Jewish home that is not a Jewish state. Israel-Palestine can be a Jewish home that is also equally a Palestinian home," unquote. Does he really believe that? Does he really believe that? That sucking up to your enemies, that never works. It simply never works. And in more hate news, this is Chris Tomlinson from Breitbart today. Mamadou Ba, head of the Portuguese anti-hate group SOS Racismo, spoke of the need to kill the white man at a recent online conference on hate speech. Ba, a Portuguese citizen originally from Senegal, attended the conference on Saturday, which was on the topic of racism and the advancement of hate speech in the world. During the conference, which was attended by Portuguese speakers from Portugal and Brazil, Ba stated, quote, "It is necessary to kill the white man, murderer, colonial, and racist to prevent the social death of the black political subject," unquote. According to a report from a Portuguese daily newspaper, the statement was a quote from Algerian far-left anti-colonialist political philosopher Frantz Fanon, who openly advocated for violence during the French rule of Algeria in his seminal work, The Wretched of the Earth. Earlier this year, the European Network Against Racism, ENAR, which has partnered with, wait for it, Hungarian-American billionaire George Soros's Open Society Foundations, called for support of SOS Racismo, which it described as one of the founding members of the ENAR. According to the ENAR, Ba and other activists had been sent threats online, and Ba himself had received a letter with a bullet casing inside it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when the issue calls for genocide, you're surprised when there's pushback regarding that? Why would anyone be surprised? Why would anyone be surprised? In great replacement news, Trudeau's plan to ramp up immigration falls flat with Canadians. Well, just as in the United States, the Canadian economy has collapsed due to COVID-19, and unlike in the United States, it is not really rebounded. And this is before all of the new lockdowns which are being instituted, starting last week and going, it's just going to lock down the whole of the country. Kate Bolingaro and Shelley Hagan at Bloomberg Quint write, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may struggle to sell his ambitious new immigration plan to Canadians. A new survey shows only 17% of respondents say the country should accept more immigrants in 2021 than it did last year, according to a Nanos Research Group poll conducted for Bloomberg News. This is it's rather shocking, because Canadians have been so conditioned and pressurized, coerced into accepting ever greater numbers of immigrants, that 17% say they're in favor of it. That indicates to me that, the opposition against it is probably closer to about 95%. Trudeau hopes to attract 401,000 newcomers next year. Oh, he hopes, does he? Come to Canada, get free stuff. Escape your shithole and come to Canada and get free stuff. I don't think he's going to have any trouble attracting 401,000 newcomers next year. There's also, 2 million foreigners demanding the right to come to Canada, saying that we're related, however distantly, to people who have already immigrated here. That number is 60,000 more than in 2019. The target would rise by 10,000 in each subsequent year, bringing it to 421,000 in 2023. Yeah. An open door policy is a central tenet of the Liberal government's long-term growth agenda. Is it now an open door policy? That is not how the Liberals ran for election in 2015 or 2019, but I suppose Bloomberg is pretty close to the truth there. But with the economy recovering from the damage wrought by COVID-19, opposition parties are raising concern. We're facing 9 to 10% unemployment. More than 1 million Canadians are out of work, Conservative lawmaker Rachel Dancho said in an interview, adding that affordable housing is also scarce. Where are all these folks going to work? Where are all these folks going to live? Those are very good questions by Raquel Dancho. It's a shame that the Conservative Party would never dare to run on an immigration moratorium. And again, I was talking about politics being broken. There's no public support for vastly increasing immigration to Canada. But what can anybody do about it? Did Justin Trudeau campaign last year on the policy of vastly increasing immigration to Canada at a time of a pandemic, which is apparently going to wreck everything, which has certainly wrecked our economy? No, but it doesn't. It doesn't make any difference, and frankly, the Conservatives aren't any better. Stephen Harper boasted. He boasted in public that during the economic collapse that followed 2008, that Canada did not decrease immigration. Apparently, there's no force on earth which can decrease immigration to Canada. And we know what the goal is. Again, this is mentioned in Claire Ellis's book, which I'll talk about on Friday, that a senior Labour Party advisor under Tony Blair admitted that Blair's open door policy, the purpose of it was to destroy the Conservative Party, destroy the right wing in England, and to make it such that no right-wing government would ever take power again, simply because of the assumption that all of these people that were that Labour was letting in or were crawling in some way were going to vote for the Labour Party and not the Conservative Party. That's what I have for today. I'm going to have a final look at the chat here. Hikma Warrior says, white men have been holocausted from the media. A bit hyperbolic. I see your point. When I look at all the young people who are hired in the media in the United States and Canada, there don't seem to be very many white males. There don't seem to be many white males at all. When was the last time you saw a white family in any advert? They're pretty rare these days. Brandon Smith says it's also hard to believe that as bad as things are right now, these will be called the good old days. No, don't talk like that. That's the kind of thing that sends people over the edge. Because I've run into this myself. Oh yeah, you're always moaning about what's happened in Canada. And I say, well, you see, I'm in a different position than you. Because I'm so much older than you, I remember the Canada before it was wrecked. So it's more painful for me than it is for younger people because they don't know a Canada that wasn't paused. Emmett Kelly-Zur says, I read Mark Gierski's article on the Canadian right in Chronicles, and he pins Canada's decline as starting with Pearson's victory over Diefenbaker in 1963. Yes, indeed. Pearson was a KGB agent. He was a KGB agent, and he did as much or more than Justin Trudeau to destroy Canada. One last comment. The Theodore Dalrymple, when he announced a few years ago he was moving to France, people said, how could you move to France? France has been wrecked. And he responded, I'm paraphrasing here, well, I take your point, but I don't know the old France. So it doesn't seem, I don't have any memory of the supposedly unwrecked France. It just seems to me, or at least where he was moving, to be more amenable than living in Britain. YT says, I miss believing that things can be better. Well, things can always be better. But one of the reasons I so greatly lament my own country is that there's no opposition. There are some people in opposition, but they are not allowed a voice. Oh, what about all those right-wingers of the National Post and what people, the Toronto Sun, people who make procedural objections to things made by government? Those people aren't right-wingers. They're just, they're disappointed liberals more than anything else. Anyway, that's it for today. I got to wrap this up because I've got someone coming in. There's a viewing in half an hour, and I have to make some do some last minute things here. But I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. very quickly, take a look at what is coming up in the culture section. On Theater Thursday, a film by Frank Capra from 1941 called Meet John Doe, with the incomparable duo of Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck. And as I mentioned on Twitter today, I can't be the first person to notice the considerable similarities between the betrayal of the John Doe clubs in Capra's movie and the betrayal of the Tea Party movement in the United States by Paul Ryan and that ilk. And as mentioned several times previously in this show, on the book club on Friday, I will be talking about The Blackening of Europe, Part 1 by Claire Ellis. If you like the show or any part of it, I would appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you would like to favor this live stream with a donation, greatly appreciated, particularly at this time of uncertainty. My PayPal address is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you are Canadian, you can send a donation directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as ever, I shall leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear listeners and viewers, manage to form a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.